everyone to season 3 of What's Your Story. Today is episode 1, and I'm so happy you are joining me this evening. I had some technical difficulties just literally a few minutes before 7:30. So thank you for staying on and jumping on with us. So What's Your Story is a community and a place where we journey along with others so that you can hear their story, so that you can be challenged, you can be inspired, you can be motivated to want to know, own, and share your own story. And so I'm Leilani Langdon, your host. And if you are new to our community, go ahead, and what we do is we jump on the comment section and we engage and we say hello. And so as you're jumping on, I want to hear from you. I want to see who's back, all right? Who's already part of our community and is jumping on for episode 1. And if you are new, go ahead and let me know where you're watching from. Say hello. I would love to connect with you. Rob, hey, long time What's Your Story family, here with Dallas and Kara. So good to see you guys. Wow, it has been just an amazing few months. And so I want to just tell you a little bit about what's been happening with What's Your Story. And as you're coming in, go ahead and say hello. But What's Your Story Live has been going on for almost a year. I think next week is going to be the 1-year anniversary of the first show. I think it's the 21st of February, if I'm not mistaken. So it's so amazing to be here starting a third season, and we're hitting year 1. It's been so good to have you guys along for the journey. Nikki, it's so good to see you, girl. Oh, I love that profile picture. Evie, how you doing, Mama Pav? Good to see you. But it has been just such a wonderful experience, such a growing and trying experience. And so I want to let you know some things that have happened in the last few months since we ended season 2. First and foremost, What's Your Story Live is now on all podcast platforms. So they are all on all streaming platforms. And if I had a clapping sound button, I would push it right now. But I'm just so excited for the opportunity to be able to continue to push and share What's Your Story beyond just the live video and visual aspect. So now you can share What's Your Story live on podcast. And as you're washing the dishes, as you're driving to get your kids, you can still hear the stories and just be inspired by them. And so don't forget to rate and review, because that's how people know that this is a show worth listening to. And so I want to encourage you to do that if you have not already. But as people are coming in, go ahead and let me know you're here, where you're watching from. Say hello, show some love, because that's what we do. And if you're new, this is what we do. The community and the chat in this, in What's Your Story Live, is a judgment-free zone, okay? We are about affirming one another. We are about encouraging one another. We are about loving on one another and also helping each other through. I mean, we have had seasons where in the comments, while the story is being shared, people have just been uplifting one another, okay? And I'm just so grateful for it. People making connections. And so that's what the chat is all about. Now, the other thing I want to let you know before I invite my hubby, who has so graciously agreed to do episode 1 with me and share our story. But before I do that, I also want to let you know that now you can support and join the What's Your Story family and community on Patreon. And what Patreon is for as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can join the family and get exclusive access to things like merch that I only have for that community, or extra episodes, or some other cool things that I can't think of off the top of my head. But go on Patreon and connect with us there and join the family there. I can't wait to see you. So in light of Valentine's Day weekend, hey there, Zakia, good to see you, girl. In light of Valentine's Day weekend, so I have a quick question, and as my hubby puts down the children, bless his heart, we have 3 babies and they are getting put down right now. But here's the thing, as Valentine's Day approaches, whether you get to do that with your boo or your girlfriends or your friends, or you're going to be enjoying a self-care weekend. Here's what I want to know. Are you team night in or team night out? Do you prefer to spend Valentine's Day weekend in, or do you prefer to spend it out? Hey, Crystal, good to see you, girl. Crystal, let me know how do you and Avery spend Valentine's Day weekend? Is that night in or night out? I know for us, Adrian, stop stressing me out. I know for us, honestly, some of our most memorable Valentine's Day experiences have been in, like, literally just putting the kids to bed, enjoying some sushi, candlelit, just very chill at home. It's been so good. It's been so good for us. So let me know in the comments if you're team night in or team night out. All right. So as you guys are, listen, look at my husband right now. Watching from wait. Is this happening tonight? I can't. So without further ado, guys, we're just going to jump on because we want to get into this story. Yes, team night in, Zakia. Keitana, team night in. Due to the pandemic, night in. Listen, that's a fact, okay? So we have a lot of team night ins. I wonder who's a team night out. We should do a team night out. My husband is coming in. Come, baby. We should do a night out one of these days without the kids. All right, guys. So without further ado, I am bringing on the special guest today. My husband, my baby daddy. I'm trying to fix the mic. What else? What are you?
I am
my baby daddy.
Your moon, your stars, tu vida, to life, your heart, everything that makes you happy.
You practiced that before coming on. You're so sweet.
No,
Look at you.
I just think about all the things you call me on a regular basis, and I decided to tell everybody.
I call you Luna. Is that what I call you?
On a
right.
Regular. On a regular.
Yes, without the kids, Keitana. All right, so guys, we are going to share our story, and usually I'm the one saying, hey, so tell me, what's your story? So before we do that, I'm going to have him tell us a little bit about himself, because you guys know, most of you know who I am, right? And so who are you, babe?
My name is Adrian Langdon, and I am your husband and the father of your children.
Yes, you are.
Yes,
even though they all look like me. But.
You know what? I can tell stories of people asking me questions. Okay, I can tell a real quick story. I can't.
Quick, because we can't be here all night.
You're right. I gotta behave. But the thing I think about every time we say that, I remember I stopped in this when we had our first son, and we're walking around. I had him in the hardware store. He just learned how to walk. This little cute boy walking behind me who looks absolutely nothing like me, and we're walking around the store, and this lady's like, "Oh, he's so cute," and he's like, "Is he yours?" And if you know me, I can respond kind of humorously. So I said, "I'm like, who him? Nah, some boy. He just started following me a couple of blocks back and been following me ever since. So we'll see. I guess I'll take him home, right?" And I'm kind of like, and look back, and this lady's looking at me in terror, like, should I call the police? So yes, I am used to.
So reckless. You're so reckless.
I've learned how to manage with children who look like their mother. But yes.
But on that note, so Adrian Langdon and Leilani Langdon, tell us what's your story. There's no one to do that for us,
so we got to do it for ourselves.
So we're gonna share our story. Here we go. You want to start for us, babe?
All right. If I think of our story, I guess I'd have to go to around the time right before us meeting, correct?
Yep.
I think
all
for
the
me,
way back.
Yeah, for me, what I would think about, I remember it was, I had just about to graduate. I went to school called Andrews University in Michigan, and we were about to graduate their senior year. And right leading up 2 months before graduation, they told me, you are missing one class. You're missing one class, and that class is not offered in the fall, it's offered in the spring. So it's not even something I could pick up in the summer or get quickly done. And I remember feeling like, I kind of felt, I was a little bit angry at God, because I felt like, man, I always try to do the right things. Right. I'm far from perfect, but I try to be the choir boy, try to do things as good as I could. But then kind of feeling like, man, God, you let me down, right? Like this is not fair. How could you let this happen? I remember during that summertime, I mean, had this kind of feeling like, you know what, I'm gonna do my own thing, you know, and just wasn't really following what I believe God was asking me to do, right? I was just kind of just living my own life, kind of turned my back about as far as you could turn your back at that time, or as far as I was willing to at that time. And I remember I had a dream in the middle of that summer, and I had this dream where I was, I don't know, somewhere in this dream, I had a dream like I was getting to heaven, or I was arriving at heaven, and as I got there, this image of God kind of turned to me, and I knew at that point I wasn't getting in, and just had like this look in his eyes, and it was like, but why didn't you try? And it was that part that hit me, that I was like, man, okay, look, I don't know if I'm gonna make it or not, but the one thing that God's not gonna say is that I didn't try. So from that point, I said, hey God, whatever you say, however you say it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna follow. And for that reason, the next thing he said was, return back to Michigan.
That's a word.
Swallow your pride. Go back to the place that you are now grumbling about, and follow me. And I said, okay, God, I'll try your way, and we'll see what happens from there. So yeah, that was the part of the story that my return back to Andrews is probably where it starts for me. What about for you? What happens there?
Yeah. So 2 months after this experience for you, we're in the gym because they would have like an all class, what would you call it?
It's competition,
right? And at that moment, I was in a situationship.
An entanglement.
I was in a situationship, okay, at the time. And everything went down at the gym in that situationship. And on my way out of the gym, after deciding that this was it, I was going home, Adrian was standing in the balcony. Now, just for some context, we were part of a group, a choir, a small choir, so to speak, at the time, but we had never really crossed paths, so to speak. Like, we sang together, we never spoke, we never interacted. And I remember him kind of motioning like me to come up, right? And I remember him calling me up. He's like, your name is Leilani, right? And I'm like, yeah. And we started talking, and one thing led to another, and he was like, well, can I call you later, right? We can continue the conversation, right? So in my mind, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go, right? You know, like, of course, he wants my number. I thought he was, trying to help. But that night he called me and we ended up talking on the phone for like 3 hours, right? On my little wireless. Cause back in the day, of course, we didn't, the cell phone game wasn't strong.
No.
And we talked for 3 hours. And by the end of that conversation, I was like, man, I really enjoyed the conversation, but I know he's just trying to kick some game. Okay. Like, I know he just wants to talk, and like, I'm not about it. Right? Yeah, wasting no time.
Zakia, you guys are calling me out in the comments. This is, I feel like this is slander. You can continue the story, but this feels like slander.
Zakia says wasted no time. All right, so, but what ended up happening was that the calls kept coming, right? Like, the calls kept coming. We kept having these conversations, but he never made a move. Like, he was never like, yo, so, I like you. Can I talk to you? And it just quickly turned into a friendship, like a legit platonic friendship, which was different for me because I had never experienced an exclusively platonic friendship, right? Everybody who started out as friends eventually wanted something more. And
wanted to holler.
Yeah, they wanted to holler. So, but it literally just became a platonic friendship for us, and we grew close so fast, right?
There was for me during that time, I'd been able to. Okay, can I pause real quick? The dilemma of trying to figure out what to do, right? When my wife is talking about me potentially making moves on her, and my mom's in the comments saying "Go son, go." the conflict that brings up in an only child's mind, it's tough to explain. But anyways, so we are at that time. For me, I'd been able to have platonic female relationships. And, I'd learned the rule. The rule was, there's just certain lines you can't cross, right? Like, you never move. You don't, not even the playful flirting, because, it starts there, where it's even just like, I see you looking nice there. I like the outfit, which is not bad. Just kind of recognize it, lean to certain things. So those are always boundaries that I just set, especially if I found a friendship that was good. And with her, I found a friendship that was good and was solid. And especially for me, I was at a point where, I was kind of over like relationships and girls. You guys, I was like, man, you guys are just problems, man. Like the
only memory I have of Adrian prior to that gym experience,
I was hoping you wouldn't tell this story.
Yes, was at a retreat that we had, and we were sitting around. I just remember coming down the stairs and a group of girls attacking Adrian because he had made the statement that he would never get married, like that he was never gonna get married, that marriage was like a sham. And that was the only experience. And I was like, this guy's crazy. And I just kept it moving. Okay, go.
Yeah. It's big talks for me. I believed it, though. I swear I believed it. My plan was just to kind of play it out, be that cool old guy, and then somewhere at 40, just kind of like, you, right? That was my plan at the time, right? Just whatever I thought. But, at that point, I know for us, we kept getting closer. And, the school year ended. She lived in New Jersey. I lived in Toronto, Canada. So it took us pretty far apart. And for me, historically, what had happened, I'd had female friends in the past, but then sometimes what happened is we're away for the summer, or somebody travels, or something happens, and kind of once we're apart, absence for me historically doesn't make the heart grow fonder. It makes the heart forget. Absence doesn't make the heart grow fonder for me. It makes the heart forget. So that's what I was expecting to happen. And I think at that point, you had actually went overseas. She went overseas to Africa at that point.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, it was fun. Got to meet somebody pretty cool. We'll see what happens. I'm not going back to that school anyways. So, I followed you. We're good to go. And lo and behold, during that summer, in this whole following of God, he decided, hey, I want you to go back again for your master's. And I was like, God, I didn't realize this following you thing was going to keep bringing me back to the place that I initially was rebelling and I was saying that I was done with, right? Yeah. But I was saying I was going to try him until he fails. That was my plan. I'll try you until you fail, so that worst comes to worst, if if I get to the gates or judgment day, I can say, hey, I tried you and you let me down. Right. So that year got back, and for whatever reason, we stayed in contact throughout the summertime, which was unusual and uncommon.
Absolutely. And so our friendship just continued to grow, and I went to Africa. Mm-hmm. I went to Africa, and I remember getting there, and the first person I wanted to call was Adrian. And I remember I made the phone call. And he didn't pick up. I was so upset. I'm like, I'm all the way in Africa and you won't pick up your phone.
Your one phone card.
Yes, my one phone card with like 1 minute on it. And something happened in that trip. And I remember my girlfriend Chantal, she was with me. And I remember having this moment of like, whoop, I feel something. I feel something a little more than just he's my friend. I'm starting to feel some feelings. Hey. I'm starting to miss him. Like, what's happening? And I remember mentioning it to her, and she's like, well, just, give it to God. I'm like, you don't know Adrian. Like, I can't, this is not even a thing. Like, we can't talk about this. I could never bring this up, because I knew that if I ever brought up the idea that maybe I was having feelings beyond just friendship, that he would like end the friendship. Like, it just was a non-starter. And I knew that about us. Yeah. Right. And so for a few months, I remember keeping those feelings at bay and trying to push them aside. And I remember that I was actually actively praying, praying the feelings away.
In the name of Jesus.
Right. Because I didn't want to lose your friendship. Like
Likewise.
your friendship was so valuable to me that I was like, I rather ignore, suppress, and let go of these feelings than to lose our friendship. And I came so close a few times. But during, months, okay? So I remember I wanted to point this out because I think so many of us have come across this, right? But I remember during this time, we were both getting closer to God individually. We were both on our God experiences. God was transforming our lives individually. Yeah. And I remember having a moment where I was like, God, I really need you to take away these feelings. I don't know what to do. And I left my dorm room and I was walking down the hallway, and this one individual, I'll never forget this moment. She looks at me and she goes, it was only us two. She looks at me, she's like, what's your name? I don't think I've met you before. And I told her my name. I said, my name's Leilani. She's like, Leilani, I feel like God wants me to tell you. Just like that, I'm like, okay, hey, let's just skip all introductions. She's like, I feel like God wants me to tell you that there are counterfeits coming your way, and you need to be careful. And I was like, what? She was like, counterfeits appear to be the real thing, but they're not. And I took that word and I walked back to my room, and I was so confused because I couldn't understand what she was talking about. And I remember sitting down and I started to pray, and I asked God, I was like, God, show me what to do. And I opened the book of Revelation, and there was a prayer. There's a verse in Revelation 4 that says, whatever door God opens, no man can close. And whatever door God closes, no man can open.
Appreciate it.
And so I prayed that prayer. I started to pray that prayer over Adrian. Like, God, whatever, if this is a door you want to open, keep it open. But Lord, if it's your will, close it. Can you close it, please? Right? And shortly after that, I remember, I'm going to share that someone came into my life who started to try to court me. Court. Let's use court.
Court. If that ain't the most Christian word.
It was courting. I mean, listen. He was whining and he was trying to send me flowers.
Fam,
like, listen, what I tell.
Hold on a second. Let me put you up on game real quick. I'll tell you, of all the things he was doing, what he was not doing was trying to court you. Let me just be honest about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me just be straight about it. The flowers weren't because he was trying to court you. So let's just keep that moving, please. All right, go on. Then.
So, but I should have known in that moment, the moment that he said, let me tell you a red flag moment, okay? I should have known the moment that he said, I love how you love God, and I want you to help me love God the same way.
That's the line. That's the line. Let me come over for Bible study.
So anyway, flowers at my door. So anyway, he was whining and dining me. And I remembered, because I had been praying this prayer, I started praying it over these situations, right? Like, okay, God, if this is not you, then I need you to close this door.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to tell you that I got on my knees to pray this prayer, okay? I got on my knees to pray this prayer about this person. And as soon as I got up off my knees, there was a knock at my door. Okay, I'm not. There was a knock on my door, and the knock on my door was another girl who had come to talk to me because she needed some advice about a situationship she was in, and she was distraught. She was crying, and she's like, "I need your help. I don't know what to do because I just cheated on my boyfriend." And the guy that I just cheated on my boyfriend with was the gentleman who was courting me.
He was courting me. Courting a lot of people, apparently.
So clearly, in that moment, I just remember, like, literally God just going like, this door is closed, right? Yeah. And he continued to close the door, but the only door he wouldn't close was yours. He would not close your door.
And the funny thing is, so now our friendship's still building. And this is awkward territory for me, because historically the friendship should be not over, but fizzled, and now there's somebody else kind of you connected with. But I remember I remember at that point, because it was new territory, and for us, the idea was, as we said, we were getting closer to God. So
Yes.
it's like if God is the center of our lives, she's getting closer to him, I'm getting closer to him. It's actually just bringing us closer at that point.
Right.
So we still feel so connected. So we just kind of like, okay, God, I don't know what this is. So I remember we stopped. We went by the, if you've ever been to St. Joseph, Michigan, we went by St. Joseph, Michigan.
did.
This area, there's like this table kind of by the water there, the
Picnic.
bluffs area there, it's kind of picnic table. I remember we kind of talked as we reconnected with the air and as she's dealing with her quarters. And and I remember we kind of talked. It was like, hey, God, I don't know what's up, but we still have this friendship going. So you know what? We're going to commit our friendship to you.
Right.
And as weird as that might sound, we're like, we're going to commit it to you. And we sat there and we prayed right there and we committed our friendship so that it would be
Yes.
something that continues to pull us closer to him.
It was, and it was such a powerful moment. That was, I think, September.
Yes, ma'am.
In October of that same year, I went to Toronto with a girlfriend of mine, the same girlfriend I went to Africa with, and to Toronto for Thanksgiving. And on the way to Toronto, I purchased a book that I randomly found that was called The Power of a Praying Woman. And I come back from that trip, and I'm sitting outside of my dorm room in one of the lobbies, and I'm reading the devotional. And the devotional in that moment is asking us about things that are getting in the way of our relationship with God, like are hindering our experience with him and are literally becoming idols, right? And so it had an activity, and the activity was to take a moment, set a 5-minute timer, and literally ask God, what is getting in the way of my relationship with you? So I set the timer, I closed my eyes, I asked God, like, just show me what it is that's getting in the way of my relationship with you. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Adrian. And I was like, whoo, I must be thinking about him a little too much. All right, Lord, again. So let's do this one more time. Like, what is getting in the way of my relationship with you? And again, he's like, Adrian. And I'm like, okay, let's do this again. So I think I did that for about 5 times before, like, I had this realization that God was like, he is getting in the way of your relationship with me. You are putting him before me. And in that moment, I just remember having this like out of body experience and immediately feeling like God was telling me I needed to end the friendship. Now, by this time, it's been 1.5 years. Like, we're super close.
We talk every night.
And
pray, devotions.
yes. And the idea, yes, Crystal says plot twist. The idea of letting Adrian go felt so insurmountable. Like, it's a relationship I had never had before. And it just felt like a loss. Like, I felt like I would be losing somebody. And I said to God, I said, God, there is no way that I could do this out of my own, like, there's no way I can't do this in my own strength. So if this is what you want, if your will is that Adrian and I end our friendship, then you're going to have to do it. And I remember calling my spiritual father who's on here, Rob, and telling him, being like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And he's like, you are going to do exactly what God tells you to do. And that's it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And your job is just to stay connected to God. So, like, I left his office moping and weeping, like, no. That night
we went to a
worship.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be on relationships. It just so happened to be on relationships. And they separated the men and the women. And they had us come back together at the end. And, like, if anybody wanted special prayer, to come up onto the stage. And so, you know, I'm up there because my heart is heavy. I'm like, Lord, how can I end this? How can I do this? And Adrian was on the other side. And I just remember looking at him and, like, just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But we prayed. And I was like, I can't talk to him. I got to beeline it out of here because I don't know what's going to happen. And so
for me, I am, for me, that morning was one of those things where you start your morning really fast. So you're at a morning class. So just going. So, I hadn't spoken to God that day because just life happens. until this moment when we're in this circle. And I remember bowing the heads, kind of praying. I'm not. She's having an emotional crisis, but for me, I'm not aware, right? I'm just living life, going to school, having a good time. I remember I bowed my head and I kind of feel as I close my eyes while they're having the prayer time, and I kind of feel like this, like a statement like comes into my mind, like, oh, tell Leilani that, hey, if I've ever been a hindrance to you, I want you to know that I'd be willing to take a step back. And I was just like, whoa, where'd that come from? And I'm like, anyways, close your eyes, continue prayer. It's like, tell Leilani if you've ever been a hindrance to you, that you'd be willing to take a step back. And I'm just like, okay, God, is that you? Right? If that's you, just, I'll say it. But, I'm kind of feeling like that's probably me. When I know it's platonic. I know that we haven't crossed any lines. I know that we pray every day together. I know that we've been supportive for each other. I know that I was there at her baptism. These are things like has been one of the most spiritual relationships that I've been a part of. And I know that it's been clean, right? So I'm like, I get it. I'm going to say that, if I've ever been a hindrance to you, so that she could come to me and be like, oh no, you're awesome. You're the best. I've never met a guy as wonderful as you. And I just kind of go, oh, oh, stop it. Stop. So I'm kind of like, nah, you're fishing for compliments, fam. Like, just back up. But I try to close my eyes to pray again. It comes again. So I'm like, okay, God, look, if that's you, I'm just going to say it. And as soon as I decide that, the feeling just leaves me. Like the tension is just gone. I'm like, okay. So before I see her trying to beeline out of the worship, that she's just trying to leave, and I kind of grab her arm before she leaves. And I'm like, hey, can you call me when you get back to the dorm room? And she's like, yeah, everything okay? I go, yeah, no problem. Just call me when you get there. And she's like, okay. And she gets back and she calls me when she gets in, and she's like, hey, everything good? I'm like, yeah, look, just something I want to share with you. While we were praying today, it's something I just want you to know, like, if there's anything, if I've ever been a hindrance to you, I want you to know that I'd be willing to take a step back. Hello? She's like, yeah. I go, sorry. I was just saying, if I've been a hindrance to you, I want to know I care about you so much that I'd be willing to take a step back. Hello? And she's like, yeah. I go, sorry. Yeah, and I was just saying, I want you to know that if anyway, she's like, no, I heard you. I was like, oh, okay, like, what? Why aren't you responding? So I'm like, well, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, that's the cue where you're supposed to be like, well, you're so awesome, you're so amazing, you've never been a hindrance to me, but you kind of leaving me hanging, fam. Like, you're not saying anything. And she, I think at that point, right, she kind of goes, well, what made you say that? Like, that was her first thing, right? Like, where's that coming from? What made you say that? Because she just spoke to Rob that day, and she knows that I talked to Rob as well, too. So it's like, did Rob tell this guy, like, hey, you need to go tell this to Leilani? So where'd you say that? I'm like, well, when I had my head bowed, I was praying, and it kept coming to me, so I decided to say it to you. And she goes, wow, okay, there's so many things I have to say. And for me, I'm like, okay, this is not how I thought the conversation was going. And now, because some of my roommates, some of my friends, they kind of make fun of me where they were like, how's wifey? Where's wifey at? And you know how I'm at? I'm at like no wifey, I'm never getting married thing. So I've always been like pushing it back. But now I hear that voice in me, like, I'm thinking that she's like, so much I have to say. And I'm like, uh-oh. Is she gonna tell me that she likes me or something like that? Like, is what all my friends saying, is it about to happen? And for me, because I knew that's not a route I wanted to go, I knew it would alter our friendship forever, right? So I'm like, if she says that, I'm losing a friend because I'm not willing to go there.
Yeah.
So I start going crazy, right? I started
panicking.
Like, okay.
I started
panicking. I'm like, well, before you say anything, just just think, like, I just want you to know, like, I'm not a good guy, like, I'm a bad guy, like, I'm, I've got issues, like, I just, there's things about me, I don't know if you quite know me, like, you know me, but like, and she's like looking at the phone, just kind of like, okay. I was like, like this, so, right? And I keep my story. And she's like, hey, we'll talk about it. I go like, let's pray and let's talk tomorrow. She goes, yeah, let's do that. Let's pray and let's talk tomorrow. And tomorrow comes. Sorry.
So that night, right, this happens. And I'm like, wow, God, you really just did that. Like, you really just answered the prayer. And I told you I couldn't do it. And now you've set the stage. So I have no choice, right? But to act, I have a choice, but I wanted to do his will. And so I remember that night, just going into my little prayer closet. Well, it was our regular closet, but I squeezed myself into that closet, and I just started to pray. And as I was praying, I felt this just weight, and this sense of like, just a bad pressure, right? Like a dark sense. And I remember all I could do was just recite verses that would come to mind. And so the Holy Spirit kept bringing different verses to my mind. I'm like, God, I don't know what you're doing. Like, this is strange. I don't know what's going on, but I want to do what you want me to do. And I was like, I don't know that I can give him up, but I'm willing to do that. And as I kept praying those verses, and I kept just exhorting God, right, in that moment, the weight, right, the darkness that I felt was settling over me lifted. And when it lifted, I heard God say, Leilani, I need you to give him up, because he's not just going to be your boyfriend, he will be your husband. And when he said that, I felt this like ultimate sense of peace and confusion, and like, did I just make that up? Maybe I'm really tired, but I felt this sense of like, this is a promise. And so I got up off the floor and went to church the next day. Yeah. And right after that, we had the conversation. I literally said to him, I can't explain to you why God is doing this, but there are reasons that you don't know yet as to why God is doing this, but we have to end our friendship.
And if you guys remember the beginning of the story, for me, I was in a, hey, God, if you say it, I do it stage of life. So, once she said that, I'm like, okay, well, then we move. Let's talk about what that means. And for this person, for the last year and a half that I'd spoken to every night and almost one time from Africa, right there, we kind of felt like, hey, what God's saying is we don't speak at all.
At all. No contact.
And the challenge of that, of course, lies in the fact, and then, we prayed together.
Sure.
And said kind of like, okay, God, we follow your will, whatever you want. Because we, at that point, had realized that, whatever God wants for us is in our best interest. Mm-hmm. We learned to trust that. He kept giving us the desires of our hearts. Yeah. So from that, recognize this challenge. We sing in the same group that meets rehearsals on every Friday. I'm the director of that group.
Oh, yes, you were the director.
We work in the same office, and the social work office. She's on one side, I'm on the other side of the hall. We had the same classes. We had the same classes because we were the same major.
Both doing similar degrees. Yeah.
So we saw each other every day. Saw each other after for work. Had rehearsal Friday and spent the weekends seeing each other.
Yeah.
There.
So imagine someone you're talking to every day, all of a sudden, like, you're just literally walking past, like, you don't know.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most difficult experiences. And it's funny because Keitana just said, God gave you the end of the story. And it's funny because even with the end of the story, it felt so final. It just felt like, because he gave me the end of the story, but he didn't give me a timeline. He didn't say, hey, in this amount of time, he's going to bring us back. Like, who knows? Like, it could have been years, right? Decades before the promise ever came into fulfillment. But what I remember doing for me was that I decided that I was just going to lean all the way into God. Like, I was just going to hold on to him, and that he was going to be the thing that was going to carry me through this extremely difficult thing. And I remember literally grieving the loss of our friendship. But in that time, there was just so many miraculous things that happened for me personally, and you'll share what happened for you. But it's interesting because I think about Adam and Eve, and like how Eve had time alone with God before she was brought to Adam. And I feel like that's what God wanted. Like he was just like, I need you alone all to myself before I bring this story to life, before I actually give you what I'm promising. And in that time, like I was like I felt like I was walking on clouds. I was so close to God. He was revealing so many things about my character that needed to change. And it's so powerful because I remember praying in the midst of the struggle, right? I remember just walking past Adrian and crying, like I just can't bear this. But I remember saying to myself, God, I need something that will tell me when the time is done, when this friendship, when the separation is over, when we can reunite or reconvene. I don't know. And I prayed a very specific prayer, and I said, God, I need you to let me know that the time is up when you can call Adrian, myself, Rob, our spiritual mentor, and Chantal, one of our friends, together. And I didn't know when that would happen, but that's what I prayed. And I got up off my knees and I continued on the journey. And in that time, God revealed things that wounds that I had not healed, people that I was holding grudges against that was like literally eating me alive and literally contributing to my inability to draw closer to God and for me to do what he wanted me to do.
And probably to draw closer in a relationship as well.
To draw closer in relationship. And so in order to do that, I needed to mend all of those things.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in? And then I'll finish that part.
Well, no, and I'll say for that as well too, there's kind of noticing you talked about knowing the end of the story. A couple people mentioned that idea, even here in the comments, like saying, often we know that God gave us the end of the story.
Yes.
But it's crazy. Sometimes it's still hard. Like right now, for example, if you are a Christian, you know the end of the story. But it's still a struggle to go through your Monday and your Tuesday and your Wednesday and your Thursday with the pain you're going through, even when you know the end, because you don't know when the end is coming.
Right.
And I think for me during that time, I think I did the same, right? I just started leaning into what God was saying. I started journaling. I started writing. I started saying, when things are out of my control, I'm going to turn to the one who has complete and total control. So I turned to God and turned to working on me, which is the only thing that's within my control now. And what's funny is during that time, remember we were journaling?
Yes.
And we were reading the same messages.
Yes.
We were writing down the same takeaways.
Yeah.
God was literally giving us the same lessons in different parts without being together, without relying on the other person to give the lesson. We were getting the same lessons, the same takeaways on the same days. And I remember during that time, I'm waiting. I'm like, man, God, I'm going to miss my friend. Because as I said, for me, absence makes my heart forget, not grow fonder. And then a few weeks later, I remember I'm sitting there and it was literally like I think it was just finished breakfast, kind of stopped and I'm like, wait, what's that? And I kind of noticed something's feeling off. I'm like, wait, what is that? Like, what am I feeling? Something feels off. And at that moment, I'm realizing, are those feelings? Like, do I have feelings for her? I'm like, no, that not me, right? I don't have real feelings. I'm done with that. And felt very drawn at that moment. I didn't even know what to do with it, but I said, okay, God, if this is what you're doing, I don't get it, but I'll lean into it because I recognize even though they weren't there before, I call God the creator, not because he created, but we call him the creator because he creates. He still creates. So he creates love, he creates healing, he creates opportunities. So even in this moment, created something that wasn't there and created it stronger in me than I'd ever expected. Can I go to kind of when we had our meeting?
So before you go there, so right at
go.
So a few weeks in, I remember I got a phone call from Rob, and in that moment, he told me that he wanted to get together because he had something to tell us, right? And at this point, I wasn't thinking anything of it. But the night before the meeting, I had this dream. And in this dream, Adrian kept coming towards me. And I remember like something blocking him, right? And I woke up and God just started to talk to me, and I kept writing. All these things were coming to me, all these memories, all these experiences. And there was one particular relationship that I needed to mend. And that was with my mother. And I remember calling Rob and explaining to him the situation and saying like, I can't confront this situation. I can't. And he was like, well, come to my office before everyone else, so that you can have this conversation, because if you don't call her, I will. Right. And so this is the type of spiritual father I had, very direct. But it's funny because when he said, okay, come before everyone else was Adrian, my girlfriend Chantal, and Rob. And so I come to the meeting early after playing a game of flag football. I remember that because I was wearing my stuff. And he sat me down and he goes, all right, you ready to do this? I'm like, no. And he's like, all right, give me your phone. I'll dial the number. And I'm like, I think I got this. So I literally have this conversation with my mother, and it was just absolutely amazing. In that moment, there was just reconciliation and forgiveness and understanding. And I literally I have never again felt this feeling, but I literally felt like a weight was like lifted off my shoulder, a weight that I didn't even know was there. Yeah. Lifted off my shoulders. And as soon as that happened, Adrian walks in and Chantal, my girlfriend, walks in. Yes.
Well, Chantal, she said, oh, the meeting. Chantal says in the comments, oh, the meeting. I walked in after her. So when I came in, everybody was in the room except for me. And I remember I walked in, and it's one of those shady setups where, wait, did they move over so that I had to sit next to you? Was that what it was? I can't remember.
But you were sitting in the middle.
Okay.
It was Chantal, you, and then me.
Okay, so I'm sitting down, and I remember we're having a question. We're having it's kind of just recap like we did, like we would often meet and just kind of like, hey, how are things going? Have worship, sing, whatever the case may be. And, it's going around, how's everyone doing? And, it gets around to me and it's like, all right, so Adrian, how are things going with you? Kind of like, what's new? Right? I'm kind of I try to do the surface stuff, like, well, just trying to
finish that though.
Trying to make it through school, trying to stay out of trouble, trying to just, do well and kind of do my best. You wanted to jump in to say something?
Yeah, what was powerful before that happened, remember Rob was telling us that he was getting ready to transition out of his position. And then we started praying, and he said, before we go any further, Adrian, you and Leilani need to talk.
Okay.
And
okay.
that's when you jumped in and started.
So I kind of shared what was happening, and then it was like, okay, so what was going on? And I remember at that time, I'm not somebody who was shared, not keen to share a lot of emotion. And I'd never told her anything about the way I felt, period. And now here I am standing in front of two other people. And I'm like, well, one of the things, so pretty much sort of over the last few weeks, I kind of started, notice that, I might, kind of notice that maybe, I have feelings for you that, that weren't there before. Yeah. Right. And, she's doing like the coy smile thing.
I was like,
right. But let me tell you the shady part, right? Not shady. We could debate whether or not this is shady, right? But, that's the part. I don't know how she feels. And right. If anything, that would be her part where she'd be like, well, I feel the same way. Right. She just takes it in like, got it. And I'm like, so that's kind of what's been happening, for me, is I just notice these feelings. And I see her, she's cheesing, she's smiling, but she's not giving me much more from there. And, we prayed, we ended it, everything kind of moved from there. But after that, we chatted for the first time in a while. And she let me know, it's kind of like, hey, this moment of us all getting together, which we hadn't done in well over a year and a half at that point. We used to do it all the time. We had done a year and a half. She goes, this is how God had told me that our time apart was going to end. And the next thought is quickly to say, all right, so here we go. I guess we're dating.
Yeah.
But we said the God who is in control and got us here is the God that we want to continue to give control to. So that not the temptation like, give me the wheel. I got it from here. I pretty much know what you want. We said, hey, we're gonna take the time and wait until what he says. It was still a little while before we connected, to be perfectly honest.
Started dating, yeah.
It
Probably
wasn't-
about a
I think-
month and a half later.
It's December, right? So October, I think it was December.
Right before break, which is so annoying.
Yeah, and sat down. I remember we were in the car, and it's actually not that romantic now when you tell the truth. But I remember I was sitting in the car, and I told you. I remember I said, I remember I've always told you that the benefits I see to being single is my freedom to be able to do what I want, to not have to answer to anybody, to not worrying about being hurt.
Right.
And I told you that I still see all those things as benefits, but I see the advantage and the benefit of being with you as greater than any of those.
Yeah.
And from there, we kind of moved into started dating.
Yep.
And immediately there, the big benefit is then what? You went to the Marshall Islands
God
for a year?
God called me to the Marshall Islands for a year. And then I came back and I was certain that he was going to propose.
Come on, fam.
And then in the car.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not going to.
Thank you. You're not going to.
And then in the car, he's like, I'm thinking, okay, fine. Maybe he's going to propose in the car. It's like the perfect night to propose. And he's like, so I have to tell you something. I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, God is calling me to Argentina for a year. And then I was like, you are kidding me. And I was like, Jesus, I cannot. Like, I get you, but we're going to have to make some moves. We're going to have to make some moves, Jesus, because I'm not down with all this waiting. Yeah.
Listen. Okay. I can't tell that story, right? You did.
No.
We're gonna keep it moving.
Well,
All right.
we got it.
We got time. We gotta wrap. So I'll say that once again, just decided to follow on to what God said. And I remember one of the times where we're having, one of the conversations like, hey, where she's like, hey, what's up? I remember kind of stopping and saying, hey, I asked her, trust the God in me. I won't do anything to this point. We have not done anything outside of his will. So don't think for a second. If God says today, let's get married, I'll show up in a tux and some toilet paper for a dress for you, and we'll get married on the spot. Like I'll do as you said, and we followed his path to where we are now.
Yeah.
Happily married here on this.
Yes. We got engaged 3.5 years later.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me just say that 3.5 years.
And proposed to you at the place that we dedicated our friendship to God years before. So there's I think the one difference from maybe the time where we could have gotten together to when we did was there's a difference between maybe looking for someone to complete you, looking for somebody else to complete you, as opposed to looking for someone to put your completeness on, or to share your completeness with. Yeah. And that to me was the difference. As Crystal's saying here in the comments, God is good. His plan is perfect.
It really is. And better than anything we could have orchestrated on our own. So baby, tell me, what has that inspired us to do? What has our story inspired us to do?
Well, it inspired us to, we wrote a mission statement that has a marital mission statement. If you haven't done that,
we got married, right?
Do it. Write a mission statement for your marriage or relationship. No, for your marriage.
For your marriage.
And we wrote that, and part of what it called us to do was to reach back to other couples that were going through various stages like ours. And for that reason, specifically with, since the crux of our story was before we even got engaged or married, we now do counseling with pre-engaged couples. So that has been a big part of our journey, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, to mentor, to be there, to support, to continue to encourage them to seek God first.
Yeah.
It's been good. Been an amazing journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be 14 years, right?
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Yes.
We're gonna be married 14 years in August.
Time has just flown on by. Ow. Ow.
Okay, you can go now. We're done. No.
Ow.
No, but it has been an amazing ride, and if
Yeah.
I can say anything, it's, follow God. We can't always see the plan. We can't always see how things are going to work out or when they're going to work out, but
Yeah.
like, he's never let us down.
No. And just recognize just the idea that the thing you are fighting for, if it's for you, he'll make sure
Yes.
he'll make sure that you have it. There is nothing anybody can do to stop you from getting what is for
Yes.
you. And at the same time, if something's not for you, you shouldn't want it, because even the right thing at the wrong time is the
Yes.
wrong thing. So follow his plan, follow his time.
Absolutely. What God has for you is for you.
Yes, ma'am.
What he has for you is for you. Oh, Crystal. Yes. Crystal says you guys were instrumental in our courtship. Love you guys.
Yeah.
Pam, thank you, and love you both. Woo, guys, what? It was so good to share our story and get a chance to connect on the start of Valentine's Day weekend. Thank you for your love and your support all of these years. You have been so amazing in this process. You have supported me so much. And you have said to me so many times, like, if God has put it on your heart, like, I'm going to help you do it. And I'm just so grateful for you.
Yeah.
So thank you, baby.
Love you.
But guys, thank you for coming tonight. I want to let you know and remind you that What's Your Story Live is on all podcast platforms. So this episode will go live on Tuesday, and you can share it and do that. You can also support by joining the family on Patreon for as little as a cup of coffee a month. You get exclusive access to so many different things. And I'm just so grateful to be able to go on this God experience. I mean, I'm going to continue to do this as long as God says, and I'm going to follow him no matter what. I love you guys. Thank you for continuing to support us. And I will see you next week for episode 2 of What's Your Story Season 3. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.